and welcome everybody, and thank you guys for joining me again. My name is Wilky, and this is going to be a video about stuff that I would personally bring to kickstart your own progress slash jumpstart your journey onto the new server. First things first, this applies only to people that played before because we need access to Eternaland, rather items from Eternaland. For those of you who don't know what we're talking about these 20,000 points and the stuff that we farmed on the other server. Now, the reason I made this video is because there seems to be a misconception and some people seem to be awfully aggravated about the fact that there's only like 20,000 points, which I think is more than plenty in order to facilitate a very fast kickstart of your journey on your second server. As I mentioned, if you don't have Eternaland stuff because you didn't play before, this obviously doesn't apply to you. But for those of you who did, essentially the first segment here is going to be about stuff that I think anyone can use or should potentially use, and the second thing is more on a personal note, or rather it's conditional things. Now, as mentioned before, there's also a list that I made, and I also linked to another list in my personal list. So if you want to check out the item prices for specific things, I highly recommend checking those ones out. I do have to say though, I personally don't have every item, and I don't think that there's anybody with all the items around, so there might just not be everything that you're looking for, but most of the important things are down there, I think. So there's that. So the first segment, as I said, is or are things that I think most people should be getting. And we're gonna start off with by saying what's really, really useful, and that is if you can get access to an electric furnace and an electric stove. Now this in total takes 8 watts, so a singular solar panel is enough to keep those two things powered. And the reason you want to get this is, first of all, this alleviates any issue or any reason for you to farm plenty of wood, and it also facilitates that in a matter that you no longer need to turn that wood into charcoal to then use stuff, or use the wood to cook your food. So also this is a little bit on a personal level because I hate chopping wood. Obviously if you like going down with your chainsaw and just hunting wood, but in general I think these two buildings are absolutely tremendously helpful for anybody in the game, because this immediately removes any excess farming for, I guess, pseudo materials or supportive materials that you would otherwise need to smelt your stuff. So in general, this would be my key goal, and this was actually what I did on the server here, is grab the items from your Eternaland to craft these things. Now the electric furnace needs 35 steel ingots, 15 copper ingots. Technically copper ingots can be obtained in the game relatively easy, but as I said, if you just really don't want to bother with that, grab those, grab the electronic parts and the standard parts. And for the electric stove, it's fairly similar. We need steel ingots, which is definitely something that I would just grab from Eternaland. Refined parts, glass, metal scraps, all of that is relatively cheap, so this is definitely something that I recommend. On top of that, we need a solar generator. Same thing here, steel ingot, copper ingot can be omitted because it can be obtained very easily, same for glass. Refined parts, fireproof plastic, and electronic parts, as well as the fuse. Now the fuse can be crafted fairly easily as well. Also, for me, I don't know why I actually did this, but I have a lot of fuses. I think I made them in bulk for something. You can see that the fuse itself is insanely cheap as well. One singular fuse is 20 points. So it's really easy to get all of these materials in. And I think this is by far the most important thing that I would try to grab on your new server, because that will just make all of your progress much more streamlined. However, this is only really if you want to do that, because if you want to refarm your stuff, there's nothing from stopping you. But this is definitely something that I would just go on about and grab that stuff. Now, I'm going to try and put all the items in here, so give me a sec. We're just going to jump over there. So, I don't have glass and unfortunately no metal scraps anymore in my inventory, but this is essentially what I would say is the absolute best or most streamlined. I wouldn't say it best because talking absolutes is always a bit of an issue, but this is something that I would definitely always bring onto my new server with me. I omitted the glass, as I said, because I don't have it. You can also skip the copper ingots. You don't necessarily need them, but I think iron ingots early on are a bit annoying to get. Same for fuses, and the fireproof plastic will take a bit of time. So I would really just grab all of that. And yeah, this is really going to allow you, as I mentioned before, build a electric furnace, an electric stove, and you have a solar generator which generates enough power for those two, and you have access power in case you want to build like 2 or something. But this will just immediately help you smelt all of your stuff, not worry about farming wood, not worrying about creating charcoal for all of that crafting needs. The reason why I said this is only so important in the early phase, because once we are in phase 2, you probably will have access to solar drills and essentially everything that we had before. So the sort of like facilitation boost or the speed boost really only comes in handy here, because once we are in phase 2, all of that is pretty much going to be there for pretty much everyone in a matter of a few hours. So this is just really something that will help you kickstart your journey. Now you can see me using a solar drill, and this is something that I will talk in the second segment. The other thing which I think is very much coming in handy, now unfortunately I don't have any advanced drills or anything prepared, but I would definitely say bringing an advanced drill, a chainsaw if you really want to, or at least some form of high-level pickaxe is gonna increase your speeds as well. Remember, we now can smelt stuff without charcoal and stuff like that, but we still need these ores. And I just showcased you before, if you do not use any drill, remember, if we don't have the drill equipped, this is this... Hello? Let me unequip my drill, please. This is the speed at which we're gonna farm ores, sulfur, and anything else, which is really tedious. So if you're just gonna go there, bust out your drill, it doesn't have to be a solar drill, as I said, an advanced drill, and you're gonna be farming this at top speeds, and you don't need a whole lot of this. So even if your drill is about to break and you cannot repair it, you should have enough materials massed up to craft everything. If you really want to, you can calibrate all your guns, and this is just gonna further kickstart all of your things. Same, as I said, goes for the chainsaw or a pickaxe. A pickaxe has the benefit that it can chop both wood and mine, but for me personally, I think mining is much more important, so I would bring a drill. A fully stocked out advanced drill is 3,000 points, so add that to the earlier points, we're around 7,000-ish points. Then I would definitely recommend most people can make good use of this. And yeah, in that regard, I think this is the basic kit that most people should be going for. Electric stove, get that, get your power plant going, and obviously synthesis benches. Everything else will come alongside. Once you have these two facilities and your power plant going, everything else will just start falling into place much more quickly. And I think this is essentially the biggest gain, because as I said, in a week from now, nobody will care about these points in terms of speed or convenience. The only thing left then to transfer are things that are hard to come by, for example, specific deviants or specific calibrations that you will either not want to reform or you need later on. But this is something that you can do at a later stage in time, so for the early game, I think this is by far the most useful thing that you can do. Now on to the subject of the solar drill. Why I recommend everybody to prepare an advanced drill, or maybe even multiple if you want to, is because you cannot trade, or rather there's no way to get all of the materials for a solar drill unless you start using stuff from your backpack. And we're gonna hop into my base and I will show you what I mean by that. I got lucky, and this is the segment where I think this is on a personal note or a personal preference thing. Some people like different things. Some people like mining less than chopping, or vice versa. I, for example, hate chopping wood, so I'm just genuinely more interested in mining. So the reason why the solar drill can prove difficult is because it requires aluminum, tungsten, or ideally even gold ore. Now, none of these materials are legitimately available in phase 1. Sure, there are people that can bug through, and if you really want to, you can get them, but be warned, this is something that the devs seem very adamant about, so they will punish people trying to abuse any of that. So I would definitely not recommend going there. But if you want to craft a solar drill, you need these materials alongside some special materials and a storage battery. Now these materials is probably something that most people will have, if not craft a storage battery up front. This is going to be really useful. Not you can craft it here with iron ingots, but I think just crafting one is making your life a whole lot easier. Secondly, you need the specialization. So I got lucky with my specialization rolls. Actually, I got super lucky because I have both the treasure hunter drill and the solar drill. Obviously, I crafted my solar drill before, but that's not the point here. If you are in the lucky state that you got one of these perk rolls for the solar drill, I think it's very much super useful to get this. Because this is a one-time craft, right? So you craft this once, you have this forever. And as long as you don't break it, which should be very feasible unless you're just like super AFK mode mining or something, then this is a one-time craft and that's it. And even if you recraft another one after phase 2 has launched, prices and everything are going to be so much, there's going to be such a surplus of materials again that none of this really matters. So we're going to be talking specifically about phase 1. And as I mentioned, you need these items, and in order to get these items, you need to grab them from Eternaland. Now, Eternaland items, when you grab them at the very beginning, are going to be bound to you. So you cannot trade them, you cannot give them to other people. So even if somebody else has the perk, you cannot give him your gold ores, but instead, he would, or that player would have to craft it for you, and then essentially sell you the eternal points that they spent to get that material. So this is very, very risky if you don't have a trustful person, and secondly, this is going to be very expensive, so I don't think a lot of people are going to be up for selling their points because they want to use them for something themselves. So, if you have access to the solar drill, I think it's definitely worth spending those materials, even if you don't want to spend 60 gold or even getting the aluminum ingot. We're not talking about the increased yield, we're just talking about you have a drill that's never going to break as long as you let it recharge during sun, and that's it. Right, obviously right now it's raining here, but if I'm just gonna go back to this farming place here, you can see that the solar drill is not losing durability, or rather when it's losing durability, it's always gonna be going back up. Now it's raining here as well, so essentially I can no longer mine. Actually no, it's sunny here, that's really good. So that's the thing about the solar drill and how you can get it early in the game. Other than that, a lot of people are worried about their guns and stuff, and I personally, I understand where some of these people are coming from, but in all honesty, I don't think worrying about your guns or armor is worth it. First of all, you need to be level 40 to use your old max level guns, which some people are. Obviously, you can still grind this, but there's no content where it justifies to having that gear. Like, everything you fight right now in phase 1 is getting toasted with level, tier 3 guns. This is all I have right now. I have a tier 3 Memento, not even fully calibrated. I have a tier 3 Doombringer, not even calibrated. And I cleared every silo and every monolith so far without any problems. Needless to say, there are some people that really want their gun, so obviously you have to spend your points on that, but I really don't think it's worth it, because you can just recraft those things in phase 2 very, very quickly again. Other than that, when it comes to personal preference, I think it's much more valuable to bring your calibrations here, because they're much cheaper. Remember, a legendary calibration here is only costs 1000 points. Obviously, if you have a absolute godlike roll, it might be worth taking your gun over. But remember that the calibration, once it's used on a gun, is no longer extractable. So let's just say I bring my old Memento here, which has a okay-ish calibration, but it's not really the best thing in terms of rolls, right? It's really poop in terms of like actual number rolls. But if I bring this over, it'll cost me 11,000 points, and if I dismantle it, I'm not going to get the calibration back. What's worse than that is, at some point in time, you're most likely going to be upgrading your blueprints. And when you are upgrading your blueprints, you have to recraft your gun, and you can probably tell where this is going. If you recraft your gun, it no longer has the calibration, and as of now, there's no way to transfer that calibration to your new gun. So whenever you upgrade your blueprint by 1, 2, however many stars, you will recraft your gun, and you will use another calibration again. So I don't really think it's worth it, at least not in this stage of time, unless you had godlike luck with the gacha machine and you have a fully maxed out blueprint gun. Then yes, by all means, I think carry that one over, because you never have to worry about anything. But even then, as I said, the kit that I decided on earlier is worth like 7,000-ish points, so you can actually bring a gun with you and not having to worry about it. So yeah, for me personally, it's only worth it if that gun would be fully maxed in terms of blueprint and it has a godlike calibration on it. Then I will bring it with me. Otherwise, I don't think this is worth it. Lastly, one personal thing or item that I think is absolutely useful to use is canned seafood in oil. this thing will allow you to mine much more quickly. So again, if you have an advanced drill or even a solar drill, these cost 200 a pop, and if you have them crafted with your dino, like with your Chephosaurus Rex, these I think mine last for around 45 minutes, which is more than enough to stock up on everything that you need in phase 1 and probably even multiple phases. And for 200 points, this is an absolute steal. So if you really want to go ham on the mining part, I think this is an option that you can go for. Other than that, there's this. Lastly, I think deviations are something to very carefully decide on, because most of these deviations can be refarmed, but as I mentioned in one of the other videos, you can no longer, or at least as of right now, there's no way for us to get the doggy right now. And if you like using it, and I have it level 4 one, which is pretty useful, so I decided to bring it. Remember, these are costing 800 a pop, which really isn't a big deal. So if you have like maybe a level 5 Buzzy Bee or something that you really want to take with you, I think it's genuinely a good idea to bring 1 or 2 deviants that have a high enough rating to justify the spend of 800 points. But it is not needed. This is why I think this is a personal preference. If you don't care about deviations early on, then don't bring anything with you. If you do care about deviations, then I think carefully select the ones that are either hard to come by or where RNG is a bit of a problem to get them, and just bring them with you. And that is it for a TLDR. As I mentioned before, get a basic kit of electric furnace, electric stove, get stuff for the solar generator. This sets you up for essentially anything that endgame has to throw at you, because at that point you're just streamlining all of your material gains and all of your cooking gains. This is going to be incredibly useful. Other than that, prepare a drill or multiple drills really. Prepare chainsaws or pickaxes. Even if you don't use them, remember, you can just put them in your Eternaland, right? They're just going to be there. You don't have to transfer them. Just crafting them doesn't really cost you a lot on your existing server, so this is something that is definitely worth it. Other than that, if you get lucky with a perk roll for a solar drill, I think it's worth to go for it. And if not, use the other drills. And the canned seafood is definitely a worthy contender, just as much as special deviations are. And that is it. I know this has been a bit of a longer video, but needless to say, I think this is a very important subject. So if you have any questions, feel free to let me know in the comment section down below. And I'll see you guys next time.